One of the issues that I've introduced earlier this year was my daughter is attending her very first year at Auckland University. So my other daughter is in her second year, and she is required this year to do a compulsory course at Auckland University called Waipapa Taumatora, I think it's called, essentially an indoctrination by Auckland University on colonisation, its deleterious effects upon Maori in this country. She has to do it. It's compulsory. She can't graduate without it, and she has to pay for it, which she's very upset about because it's going to cost her over $1,000 to learn something she doesn't want to learn and isn't particularly relevant to her area of study. But then again, throughout the whole of New Zealand, the indoctrination of undergraduates has become a theme, it has to be said. And we've had Professor Elizabeth Rata on that particular issue this week. And freedom of speech would seem to be threatened with, and certainly in Auckland University's case, freedom of dissent will lead that you can't get a degree even though you might be brilliant and you might have completed all the coursework for that particular degree. The compulsory indoctrination must occur. How we deal with academic freedom, how students can, in actual fact, dissent, whether or not staff are punished for having dissenting views to whatever the orthodoxy might be of that university, have become live issues in this country. And joining us to talk about that, former Minister of Health, but now Minister of Tertiary Studies, and something else that I can't remember, but he'll tell us in a second, is Dr. Shane Reti. Dr. Reti, what's the other portfolio you've got, as well as that one?
So Minister for Universities, Minister for Science, Innovation and Technology, Minister for Statistics, and Minister for Pacific People.
Ah, well, gosh, yeah, you've got to go to range there. You're finding those interesting, those particular subjects?
Oh, yes, fascinating. So imagine the biggest science reform in the last 30 years. And, the problem we're trying to fix there is we have duplication of science endeavours, we have underutilisation in areas, too much competition, too little competition, and no alignment with government priorities. So that's the problem we're trying to fix in the science portfolio. And statistics continues to be a portfolio that needs a lot of work as we look to get a census, the next census up.
Oh God, does it what, two botched censuses in a row? It's not very good, is it? And that's what you're trying to stop, the third botched census, I guess.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out how we can move with like-minded countries because the cost of the 2023 census was $300 million, nearly 2.5 times what the 2018 census was, and predictions for the 2028-2030 census are that it could be $300 to $400 million. Other countries have moved to an administrative data first and supplemented it with other surveys. So we're looking at all the options as to how we can do a better job and a more cost-effective job, and maybe take some learnings from what other countries have done.
Question, what was wrong with the old way that was done that seemed to be very effective and done every 5 years and nobody questioned the data and then was
Oh, it doubled
abandoned
or
and
tripled.
yeah.
Sorry, the cost doubled or tripled from 2018 to 2023, from around about 125 to nearly $300 million. So the cost of enumerators and getting out and knocking on the doors just became prohibitive.
But then at least you can rely on the data, and after all, there's so much government planning that's reliant upon it. I'd rather have the stats, thanks very much. But oh well, I know how you can save $60 million. You can take it off Radio New Zealand. Anyhow, let's go. Let us go.
You
I've
know
just
I'm
given
not
you.
offering a comment to that,
No,
Michael.
I know. Your leader has though, and he says, well, that's just Winston, and that's fair enough. Listen, university have become, and we interviewed Professor Rata this week about it. She's won a significant victory in favour of freedom of speech in actual fact at Auckland University over the last couple of weeks. But universities now are being seen increasingly as indoctrinations, universities rather than centres of learning. And there have been significant academic pressure placed on both academics and now at Auckland University upon undergraduates to have a particular worldview instilled upon them and to teach that. In your new responsibility as the Minister for Universities, will you be addressing that particular issue?
Yes, so the Freedom of Expression Amendment that is part of our coalition agreement will look to address that. But let's look at what we're trying to achieve here. Universities should have institutional neutrality. Secondly, they should support freedom of expression. They should support academic freedom. Three key principles that universities should have. They should also be the critics and conscience of society. And we also need to acknowledge that universities do have a degree of autonomy as to what they can teach, but it needs to be in that framework that I've just described to you:
Yeah.
institutional neutrality, academic freedom, and freedom of expression. So the amendment that we're looking to make through the coalition agreement will require universities to come up with a freedom of expression statement. They'll then need to describe how they're going to monitor that statement, and furthermore, they'll then need to report their monitoring and compliance with their freedom of expression statement in their annual report. So we're certainly sending very clear messages to universities as to what our expectations are of them, and how we will monitor it, and how we will demonstrate that to the public.
Certainly, from my point of view, that seems a move in the right direction. But I'm just asking this question. Do you perceive that there is a problem for you to be able to intervene in this way?
So some universities have already had freedoms of expression statements, which do cover many of the issues that I've described. Others not so much. And certainly, as we look through the coalition agreement, a number of issues and examples were raised: denied access, for example, to speakers to universities, that the amendment that we'll make will seek to address. So not a similar set of policies across the university sector. So we will lead and guide them as to what needs to be a reasonable set of freedom of expression policies across the university sector.
Green MP Francisco Hernandez, in response to this, said these changes risk turning our universities into hostile environments unsafe for marginalized communities. Misinformation, disinformation, and rhetoric that inflames hatred towards certain groups has no place in our university, in our society, let alone our universities. Freedom of speech is fundamental, but it's not a license to harm, and that universities should be trusted. You obviously don't believe that that is a fair and legitimate argument.
I think universities are a place, as I said, where they should be the critic and conscience of society, but there are already some parameters around what can and cannot be said and expressed in universities. For example, the Human Rights Act has very clear messages around inciting racial hostility. So there are some guardrails around that already. I understand his concern, but I also understand that we need to be very clear around those three principles that universities need to adopt through their freedom of expression statement.
Shane, would you agree that universities, though, have become increasingly, shall we say, leftward leaning in terms of their academic orientation and identified with causes that would not be considered to be mainstream?
I have heard those statements through media and had them passed to me, which is why the first principle I said to you was institutional neutrality as being very important. And indeed, the amendment will say things to the effect of universities must or should not take positions on matters that don't directly relate to their roles or functions. So we'll make it very clear that they are to remain neutral, but in that same breath to have that competitive tension, that competitive conflict of ideas that is a privilege for universities.
The Tertiary Education Union also doesn't support this piece of legislation. Their president has been quoted as saying that universities might open up space for climate deniers. We can have people who believe in creationism coming into our campuses and speaking about it and how dreadful that is. It gives you some indication of the problem, isn't it? That even though, there might be people of different views out there, the Tertiary Education Union is quite prepared to ban people that don't agree with its fundamental beliefs.
Yeah, no, I think the difference of views is what is that fertile learning ground, again, as long as it's a lawful expression of views. But I think the ability for people to express those views and then to substantiate how they believe those views to be true, surely that's part of the benefit of being at university, that intellectual dynamism and that competing of ideas.
Okay, the compulsion of the Auckland University course for first years, which my daughter is undertaking, as I've introduced you to. Is that going to go under this, or will Auckland University still be allowed to compulsorily indoctrinate all of its undergraduate students and charge them for that indoctrination?
So university courses or university programs can have prerequisites across a range of programs.
Yes, but they're designed to
And
deal with academic issues, not to indoctrinate you. There's a difference,
well,
right?
as I was saying, they also have autonomy as to what courses they teach. I asked and looked into this,